Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Burning Question series by Fantasy Football Scout. In this series, Pras and I, Sonaldo, talk about the key hot topics for the week. We are already in Gameweek 29 and on episode 15 of Burning Questions, so it's been a privilege potting with you, Pras. How are you this week?
Likewise, my friend. It's a great week to be podding because I think both of us are doing really well. We usually don't do game week previews, so we will avoid any smugness and talking about our game weeks. But I don't think we can not talk about the James captaincy. So I thought before we start on our agenda, let's spend a couple of minutes because there's people who didn't have James or didn't captain James, and let's talk about what was the thought process and why you went there. And this is not to kind of say this was the only way, but how did you land up? I mean, where were you, a couple of hours before the deadline? Did you have James? How did you think about captaining him?
Yeah, it was FPL is fine margins, and this week was especially fine margins in terms of the variance in captaincy and who you brought in and this and that. And I don't think I was thinking about James for pretty much the entire week until due to my team structure, until sort of the news came out about Azpilicueta being injured and how James is pretty much nailed to start this next game. So when I heard that, I started to get a little bit of FOMO, and then obviously the Twitter community was rowing him up, and I made a decision in the last 10 minutes to move for James. So it really worked out. In terms of captaining him, there was no doubt that if I brought him in, I would be captaining James. So I think part luck and also part just final instinct to go for him really paid off on my end. How about yourself, Pras?
Yeah. No, you played it really well. I mean, you avoided Rafinha, had Coutinho, right? You have Coutinho?
I don't have Coutinho. I have Ramsey.
Oh,
So
you don't?
I probably
Okay.
would have
Okay.
gone to Rafinha. I don't think I was thinking about Coutinho. Yeah.
Okay. So look, with me, I was, basically I had Robertson in my team, and a lot of people who wildcarded in game week 26 essentially have sold Van Dijk or Robertson and gone for James, and that was the obvious move. And people were even thinking of reversing that. I'm not sure people will still do that, but in my case, I was stuck because I didn't want to sell Robertson, and we'll come to Liverpool today. And so I wanted to get a Chelsea defender, but the only way was Gabriel to someone for free, right? And I could go up to Thiago Silva. And up until basically the night before, I was set on Thiago Silva. I even tweeted, this is my free transfer, Gabriel to Thiago Silva. I get my 2 clean sheets. I'm happy. But then in the night, when I was sleeping, I was having nightmares about James and essentially thinking Chelsea is going to clean. If James gets an assist, that's 10 points because, 3 for the assist, 4 for the clean sheet, 2 appearances. In fact, it's 12 points, 3 bonus because he'll basically be in amongst the bonus if he gets an attacking return. And I was like, this is just, I'm not going to enjoy it. And so I thought I need to now think of ways to basically fund James without losing Robertson. So there were 3 options. I could have downgraded Ramsdale, which I didn't want to do. I could have downgraded Saiz, and I could have downgraded Jimenez. Now, either Saiz or Jimenez, given how Wolves are doing, turned out to be a good move. I ultimately went Saiz to Kilman for a hit, which isn't the best hit in the world, but it funded the James move. And the captaincy, again, I was completely 50-50 between him and Rafinha. I wasn't even thinking about Coutinho, to be honest, because I had Ramsey already. So there's an element of I'm already invested in Villa adequately. So between Rafinha and James, I was completely 50-50. And basically, it was coming down to who do I want? Do I want a steady return or do I want that upside? And honestly, I was shifting between Rafinha and James 2 minutes to deadline. And I just landed on James because it felt like I should do it. And now let's talk about people who didn't do this, right? There's absolutely nothing wrong. There are lots of moments in this season where things have been high variance for one marginal call. And I think if you went for Rudiger captain or you had James or didn't captain, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's a little bit of bad luck on your part. It's a little bit of, you couldn't move to James for whatever reason. It's absolutely fine. I mean, I don't think you need to worry about it. He was about 60% effective ownership.
Yeah.
So it's going back to the Bruno discussion. If you remember, you and I had Sonaldo, where if you got it, you're flying. If you haven't got it, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
So that's basically where I am and wanted to discuss James. Any other thoughts?
No, I think it's well put. I mean, it's unfortunate, but you can't get every call right. If you get every call right, you're probably in the top 100, 500 in the world. And I've had instances where, for example, this went right, but I got the captaincy in game week 9 Salah wrong. I got the Bruno one wrong in I think 21 or 22. So it's something. It's not season ending. I definitely don't think so. But it definitely would help your rank a lot. But moving forward, there's still a lot of game weeks left to be played, and so many things in play. So I wouldn't be too upset about not having James as captain or even James in your team this week.
Yeah, I mean, he may even get a rest against Newcastle. He then has a blank. You have time to catch up. And people who don't have James probably are not stuck with him, and they can probably chase upside in other defenders, which we will talk about as part of our topics. So do you want to introduce the topics, Andy?
Yeah, so today we'll do sort of another helicopter final phase leading up to game week 30. And then we'll do players to target, especially for game week 29 doubles. So we'll do a section on Arsenal, Spurs, followed by Liverpool, then Arsenal, and then we're gonna round it up with Everton, Brighton, and Newcastle. And then we'll do our team sort of not reveal, but talk through our teams at the end of the Burning Question series as usual. So we'll move on to the final phase of 29 and 30. So Pras, what do we have here?
So basically, we're not going to do a chip strategy right now, because I think the international break between game week 30 and 31, that's the big one, because we'll have the FA Cup results from the quarterfinals. We'll almost know the picture for 33, and the predictions. I've seen some predictions on Twitter. I think James from Planet FPL did an amazing podcast on Friday before the deadline to predict this. But ultimately, he's predicting a lot of results here. And on top of that, he's predicting how the scheduling will happen if those results happen in that way. So there are so many ifs and buts that I think the game week 30 to 31 window, that international break, that's the time where you need to be planning. So I'm calling this the final phase of the third phase. And basically the phases are, one is the time, early season leading up to Christmas. You have the Christmas phase. This was the phase which basically takes you up to game week 30, where a lot of people are either building their team towards 30, dead-ending their team, or wildcarding. So this is the end of that. So game week 29, game week 30, what we know now is Arsenal and Spurs are the only teams that have 3 fixtures in these 2 game weeks, because they have a double in 29 and they have a game in 30. So this is going to be a hot topic for people to consider. A lot of people will be considering Spurs and Arsenal assets. The other teams that look interesting over the three game weeks are perhaps a Wolves team, but they have not looked good at all. So we're not going to be spending any times on Wolves. In fact, if anything, you should be looking to get rid of those assets, because some of them may not even have a game or maybe dropped. So let's see what happens with Wolves on Thursday. Leeds could be semi-interesting. They have Norwich at home, and then they have a fixture in 30. Rafinha looked good. So if you were already on Rafinha, I think he's definitely a hold. And then after that, there's not a lot other than maybe the Liverpool double. So the Liverpool double is Brighton away and Arsenal away. They're the second best team, or one of the top 2 teams in the league. If they have a double, you have to be thinking about their assets. Whether you have 2 or 1, you need to be thinking about whether I should really go for a Spurs defender versus a third Liverpool. So that's a decision people will have. And that's really it. I mean, I don't think there's any other team that's worth. Maybe Southampton have a good single game week this week, so worth holding on to them because they play Watford at home. Chelsea or Newcastle at home, but it's people need to remember that Chelsea have a Champions League game midweek. So, and there's only a small gap between the Norwich game and the Newcastle game. So the Norwich game is on Thursday, the Newcastle game is on Sunday. So there may be rotation there. And then Man City play Crystal Palace. I think these are the standout fixtures that you could target. And that's the lay of the land as we see it.
Yeah, I think for the first time in a couple of game weeks, it's pretty straightforward what we see, what's ahead of us. I think 29-30 is going to be a very, very interesting time, especially with the blank coming up. So I'm very excited for game week 29.
You're well set up, right? We'll come to your team.
Yeah, I'm pretty well set up. Yep. So, yeah, looking forward to it. Should we move to the first team in Spurs?
Yep, go for it.
Okay, so we'll do sort of semi breakdown of Spurs. It's going to be very popular because of the double game week. Plus, they also have a fixture in 30. So I think a lot of people are talking about the popular assets right now, including sort of the combination of these players. Kulu and Kane for one. So a lot of interesting debates and thoughts. So yeah, first things first. Spurs fixtures are fantastic for pretty much the rest of the season. On the season ticker, they're right up there, including a double game week this week. And also, it's very important to note that they're out of all cup competitions, and so they can purely focus on the Premier League. And while Arsenal had a firm grip on the top four spot or the fourth spot, you just never know, right? And I'm sure Kane and Conte are hungry, plus Son are hungry to make a final push to get Champions League berth for the next season. And in an interview too, Kane said something similar along the lines after the Everton game. So I think they're going to be re-energized and sort of, right. So if you look at previous to this game against Everton, they've lost 4 out of 6 and 2 wins against City and Leeds. So it was kind of like very inconsistent, hard to predict. And granted, they did play Everton, so we don't want to get too high up on their assets. But what do you think, Pras? Do you think there's sort of a chance for form here and turning things around, especially with the double coming up?
No. I don't think anyone other than Liverpool or Man City are dependable teams in the leagues, to be honest. Even Chelsea, I mean, who do you go for other than their defenders? And they haven't been firing, the whole season. So I think you're going for Spurs because they have the double. Yeah. They are interesting opportunities opening up with, the defenders or the wing backs. There's an interesting opportunity with Kulusevski. And there's an interesting opportunity with Kane completely being red hot in form and basically the Kane that we have known for years. So I think that's where people are looking at Spurs. But if you're going to ask me, are they dependable assets for the rest of the season? I don't think anyone is other than City or Liverpool.
Yeah, totally fair. I think we should proceed with caution, but they do have a double and some decent fixtures. So, this is one of those things where you try to jump on and hope for the best in terms of the fixture run here. So the first person I'll obviously talk about is Harry Kane. As you mentioned, red hot form. As a non-Kane owner, it was extremely scary yesterday. Granted, his effective ownership's not, massive still. He every time he was scoring, getting bonus and in the play was hurting my rank. So I'm very worried as a non-Kane owner moving forward. First of all, congratulations, Harry, as he is officially scored more goals than the great Thierry Henry and 6 most goals in the Premier League history, which is just incredible if you think about it at the age of 28. Just an incredible player, but more than just goals, right? Just overall, one of the, now there's debate about who's the best passer in the league, KDB or Kane. That's how good he is. In the last 10 game weeks, he's top amongst all forwards for having the most points, which is not really surprising.
The forwards is it won't be hard to win that one. But
in the last 5 game weeks, I did 5 game weeks because it included sort of Kulusevski coming into the picture. I don't know if it's exactly 5. It might be a little more. And Kulusevski also, I don't think started all of them. So just a general last 5 game weeks. He's second to Salah in expected goal involvement, second in XG non-penalty, second in shots inside the box, second in goal attempts, big chances created. Basically, statistics-wise, he's right up there amongst the top. So there's no doubt about this guy's ability, and I think he's got to be the first choice for all Spurs assets. Would you agree, Pras?
Yeah, I think if you're wildcarding, so I'm not suggesting people wildcard this week, but if you're building a team from scratch and the proof of the pudding is people have wildcarded in 26, in 28, pretty much the masses have gone for Kane, especially in 28. I mean, I think in 26, there was still a split between do you go for Saka and Kane or Lacazette and Son. But I think given how Kane has done, I wouldn't think anyone would go Son over Kane on a wildcard. Now, it's a different story if you have a Son and you don't have a Kane. Do you actually make the sideways move? But we will come to that.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. He's the second best premium in the league because of the fact that he is now involved in both the assists and the goals. And the fact that he's just nailed. I mean, didn't
Yep.
Conte say like 2 weeks ago that he'll play with one leg or something? I mean,
Yep.
he will play every game essentially like Salah.
Yeah, nailed and plus 90 minutes pretty much every game. So, yeah. So yeah, with that being said, also just a note on Kane, there's debate about captaining him over Salah this week. That's how, and it's a legitimate question, right? That's how good his form is. So very interesting thoughts there. But I just wanted to do a quick word on Son. There's a lot of talk about my guy sort of slowing down and being out of form, and get that stuff out of the window, because that's also showing the level of respect that he's getting at the level that he's played over the last couple of years. I mean, he's been such a reliable FPL asset in the last 5 years. In the beginning there was issues with rotation, is he nailed this and that, and now it's more about his cost and how expensive he is. But he's right behind Salah in the entire Premier League in terms of goal involvements this season. 11 goals, 5 assists, second to Salah. Just a friendly reminder, guys. And continues to tick along. Yes, yesterday I got very excited after he scored. I think it was the first or second goal, and then he had maybe one or two big chances he missed, and an opportunity to assist one or two more times. So he's there. He's in the picture. I wouldn't be too worried as a Son owner. Of course, you're envious of the Kane owners at this point in time, but I wouldn't be jumping on the gun to get rid of Son in order to move. Fund a move for Kane is what I would like to say, especially as a Son owner myself. So in the last 5 game weeks, Son is second behind Bruno in terms of chances created, and third behind Bruno and Ward-Prowse in terms of expected assists. And I wanted to mention this because when you think of Son, you think of his goal scoring prowess. But right now, what you're seeing is he's sort of taking a step back to help the team out. And if you look at just his sort of touch heat map, you can see how spread out he is and how deep he's coming at times. And especially the Leeds game, Kulowski's first goal. The one where he makes a cut in like Robin and then takes a nice shot, and Kulowski, marvelous individual, brilliant goal. But if you actually pay attention to that goal, Son makes a run across Kulu, bringing 2 defenders with him in order to open up that space for Kulu to drive in. So I think there's a lot of things that we have FPL managers don't sort of notice in terms of team play. So just a
Yeah.
quick word on my guy.
So one thing on Son. Firstly, by the way, I completely agree with you. Son is a very good option, right? I mean, people are thinking that suddenly Son is rubbish and Kulusevski is better than him. There is no way. I mean, Son is way better than Kulusevski as an asset. People are basically debating whether it's worth the 5 million more, and that's where the discussion gets more interesting. But if you have Son, you should still be bullish about his prospects. And the other thing about Son, but there's actually 2 other things. The fixtures against Brighton and Man United are not the fixtures where teams sit back. They're traditional Son games, like the Leeds one where a lot of people went for captaining Son over. Now, these are decent away games. They're hard games, but I think they're also ones where Son tends to do better than Kane. I have no data to back this other than the fact that I've just experienced games where the harder ones are where Son delivers a little bit more. And the second point is also the fact that Sessegnon is injured. So I don't know how the dynamics change with Reguilon starting over the double. I don't know. Have you put any thought into that? If Reguilon starts, does that make Son a little bit more attacking because Reguilon is more guy who's giving the width versus Sessegnon, or you think it's the same?
I think it's the same, but it's very interesting you brought that up because when I'm talking sort of about Kulowski and Doherty, Reguilon also is sort of involved, and Son is sort of involved in one of the tactical sort of plays they do. So yeah, I think I wouldn't read too much into it, to say the least. Yeah. Yeah. So you want me to continue?
Yeah, go for it. I mean, just that's fine. I mean, if you're on the table, just for the listeners, if you want to talk about some of the numbers on the table.
Okay. So what I want to do now is, since we pretty much know everything we need to know about Kane and Son, even without deep diving into it, the 2 popular assets right now in the community are Kulowski and also Doherty, right? And so in terms of Kulu, this table sort of shows all mids in I believe the last 5 game weeks, and Kulu is right up there. I think second in terms of total assists, and he's had 2 goals and 4 assists in the last 5, and top amongst all mids. So a very straightforward sort of outcome stat here. Also, he's very involved XA wise, 12th amongst all mids in terms of XA in the last 5 game weeks. So again, his assist potential is sort of been notable, I guess, since his quick implementation into the Premier League.
I would say on this table, by the way, this where you've compared the XA, that doesn't read too well to me. I mean, it looks fine.
Yes.
I think having an XA of 1 over 5 game weeks is okay. He's actually overperforming that to quite an extent. He's got 3 assists out of an XA of 1, and it also shows me that Son is the creator. I mean, he's got an XA of 60% more than that, so 1.6, and he's only got 2 assists. So a lot of times people focus too much on Kulusevski's assist potential, saying Son is the better creator between the two. But again, it comes back to price. People will throw the argument that would you rather have just Son or would you rather have Kulusevski and Kane? And that I think is a more interesting debate. But I think one takeaway from the Spurs analysis is, you can still be bullish about Son if you have him, and if you have other fires to put out. Maybe in defense, go for somebody else. You don't have to take Son out for Kane. It's not the priority move.
Yep. Okay, so to round up the Spurs section, I kind of want to talk about the combination of Kulu and Doherty and why I think both these guys are nailed, especially I think at least in the short term. I'm pretty much sure that Doherty's going to play the majority of games, hopefully, right? And I'll try to explain why. And without getting too deep into it, Conte's always, we've known him as a 3-5-2. At Spurs, he's tried to utilize a 3-4-3. It hasn't worked to the best, but the main factor of Conte's successfulness is his wingbacks being very speedy. That's the key word, speedy. Royale and Doherty are not considered speedy wingbacks. So what I've seen in this Kulusevski plus Doherty combination on the right is he's actually sort of taken the speediness out of both of them and tried to utilize them well together. What I mean by this is Kulu's also not that speedy, right? So Kulu's been told to push out wide and sort of hug the touchline and stay wide. You can really compare Kulusevski's touch heat map versus Son's heat map, very drastically different, right? Even though ideally you're thinking a 3-4-3. And you can see Doherty's heat map is more inside. So yes, the majority of it, he's on the wings, he's on the sideline, but you can see those purple spaces sort of more inwards. And Doherty excelled really well at Wolves by cutting inside. That's his forte. Yeah. And positioning wise, he's been told to stay a little bit more inside to make up for that lack of speed to be able to cut inside. So basically, if you're for the listeners, if you're trying to get a picture of what I'm trying to say, Kulusevski's staying out right, and Doherty's been given the sort of role to roam inside a little bit more. So
if you watched yesterday's match, the assists that Doherty got, or at least the chances he was creating, was more the crosses. I didn't see the Wolves type Doherty in the box. Did you notice more of that? Or
exactly. So I will get to that actually. That's a very good point you made. So what? So there's 3 things that's happening with Doherty coming inside, and the first thing is that he's able to participate in the defensive action. So yesterday, when you saw Everton play, they had 3 midfielders versus 2 midfielders for Spurs. Bentancur played really, really good, but Doherty's being more inside to help defend that zone area, which is why he actually had the highest amount of interceptions or tackles or one of those defensive stats. So basically, he's that's also helping the team, which is why I think that's part 1 of him being nailed. Number 2 is his penalty area play is coming around. He's cutting inside. And yes, he's not cutting inside like the Wolves days, but you still saw 1 or 2 chances, especially that one assist that Son almost had in the first half that almost led to a goal. And finally, the thing you just mentioned, Pras, is most of his play came from crosses, right? And earlier you mentioned what happens with Reguilon and Son on the left. So when you think of Kulu and Doherty on the right, slower, and you think of Reguilon and Son on the left, much faster, especially Reguilon and Sessegnon, a lot of build-up play is happening by Spurs giving the ball to the right, where Kulu is very good at hold-up play, and Kulu is attracting defenders and pushing the opponents more to the right side, and then they're flipping it across to the other side through Doherty, especially yesterday. So chances created and the chances created here, heat map, is very central, as you can see. And those two of those four are actually assists. One of them being that incredible pass to Harry Kane with that volley finish. So, do you understand what I'm trying to say? There's a lot of side to side play, but again, without getting too much into tactics, in terms of FPL, we're looking for a 4.8 asset in Doherty, who's had an incredible game, and I think he's nailed. So I'm very tempted to go to him. And the combination of Kulu and Doherty on the right is actually very formidable, and probably something that they're going to go try to utilize for the next few game weeks, even with the Lucas Moura option roaming around. And surprisingly, it's Son who's usually coming off first right now instead of Kulu.
I was surprised with that as well. Yeah. Is it because of the Moura injury, you think, or is it just tactical?
I honestly, I don't know. I think it's also sort of, the game was dead and they're trying to maybe rest his legs a little bit more. But I think basically that's, to sum it up, I think we should sort of give our opinion on, who would you go for as a 3?
I mean, let me ask you 3 burning questions on Spurs. Okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'll give my view as well, but let's kind of bring it all together. So question number 1, if you had Son and Jimenez and you had no other transfers, no other burning issues in your team, would you take the hit for Kulusevski and Kane?
If you had Son and Jimenez.
So it's the same money, almost the same money. So Jimenez is obviously not starting. He's struggling for minutes. Wolves are basically, looking really bad.
I think so.
Now, this may change on Thursday, but Son out and Jimenez out for Kulusevski in and Kane in. Would you do it?
I think I would do it, yes.
I would do it if there's no other issues. But I think maybe a Kilman to Doherty move, basically taking out another Wolves stud, probably may have more upside for me. Right. Is it worth a -8? Maybe not. So I sit in a little bit of the camp that yes, there is some upside, but you could get more upside from another transfer in defense. So that's basically my view. Okay, second burning question for you. If you had to choose one, you can only make one transfer. Not everyone likes a hit, right? If you had to only choose one between either getting Doherty in or getting Kulusevski in, which one would you prioritize?
Oh, that's the one that's troubling me. But this is with just one of Son and Kane, right? I'm assuming most.
Yeah. You already have one of Son and Kane.
Yeah.
Now you can get one more without kind of ruining your team, or you don't want to take a hit. So choose one between Kulusevski and Doherty.
I think it's such a tough question. I think I'm 50-50.
No fence sitting. Come on.
No, I'm not fence sitting. I think it's 50-50, but so it's team dependent, right? If you need a defender, I think you go for Doherty. If you need a midfielder, you can go for Kulu. However, if I had to pick one, I think I'd go for Kulu. Just the. I think I would go for Kulu. How about yourself, Pras?
I would go Doherty.
Oh, really?
No, well, my reason is simple. We don't have a lot of defenders. When you take out City and Chelsea as defender options, because I think in 29 they don't have a double. You're not going to overinvest in them. They are blanking in 30. So therefore, we basically don't have defenders in the game outside of these guys and Liverpool, obviously. So I'm thinking you should be fixing your team in defense more than your midfield, because in midfield there's still lots of options. You have Bowen. Maybe Bowen will be okay for 30, so maybe keep him. You have Coutinho, who's looking really good. You have Rafinha, who plays and has a game in 30. So for me, you can fix your team better with the Doherty, and that's why strategically I think it's better. Who does better on the day? Who knows? I mean, both are looking good, but and I don't think for what it's worth, Spurs will keep maybe one clean sheet over the double, Brighton and United, because United attack is actually decent.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to who do you want to fix in your team. And I think for 30 as well, again, 30 has no defenders, no good defender. Can you name one defender that you want in game week 30?
No. Yeah.
So again, you want somebody with decent upside, and I think Doherty fits that bill. So that's basically on Spurs. Hopefully we addressed people's questions. I'll come to one more burning question at the end, which links Arsenal and Spurs. And I can tell you now, it'll be basically, if you had one transfer, would you pick Martinelli or Kulusevski? But I'll come to that after we've done our analysis of all the three teams. So let's go to Liverpool now.
Okay.
So with Liverpool, I think we this should not take as long, because we already know that Trent and Salah are not going anywhere, right? I mean, if you don't have Trent or if you don't have Salah, get them. Don't waste time listening to this. Just transfer them in. If you're then looking at a third Liverpool, firstly, there's a strategic point. They have a blank in 30. So you need to think about, should I be prioritizing a Diaz or Kulusevski? Should it be a Robertson or a Doherty? So it basically interplays with how well are you set up for game week 30. My perspective is I already have Robertson. I think you have as well, Sonaldo.
Yep.
So for us, it's an easy one. And I'm very happy that I don't have to make this decision, because ultimately this is the same decision people had to make with James, right? People were thinking, good, I mean, this guy has a double, but then he may not play. He doesn't have a game in 30. Do I want him? And I think, getting a third Liverpool player or getting a player from the second best team in the league for a double game week is well worth a thought. So I would rather sacrifice a player in 30. So as an example, I would rather have Robertson for 2 games rather than Saiz for 3 games. And that's the thinking. Actually, Saiz doesn't even have 3 games. He has 2, but I don't mind if I go with 9 players in game week 30 just because I had Robertson. So that's my thinking. And actually, I will have 9 or 10 max in game week 30. So the first analysis that we come to is people are talking about Salah triple captaincy, Salah captaincy. I also put out a tweet that Salah hasn't scored an open play goal since that Norwich game. So he obviously against Leeds, he had 2 penalties. He had 120 minutes against Chelsea. He had no goals. And then against West Ham, he had no open play goals as well. Or actually no goals. So what I basically went back and looked at is it because that Diaz is playing on the left and Mane is playing up front, so that there's no Jota or Firmino type hard worker who's creating chances for Salah? This is what I wanted to look at for my own team and for my own triple captain decision. So if you look at the heat map that we've first shown, firstly, this tells me, I mean, obviously, this compares game week 1 to game week 25. And the one on the right shows game week 26 to game week 28. And obviously, Salah didn't have a game in 27. So it basically gives you 3 game weeks versus everything before that. And for me, in terms of positioning, there's no real difference. Salah is doing Salah things. He's still very central, coming into the box from the left, attacking. So that ticks my one box of, it doesn't mean that just because Mane is playing in the center, Salah isn't as central to the game. So then we come to the next chart in terms of expected XG and XGI. So interestingly, actually, Salah has a better XG and overall XGI. Now, of course, the caveat is that this includes Norwich, Leeds, and West Ham. West Ham are obviously no mugs, but it includes Norwich and Leeds. So it completely skews the minutes per XG numbers. But for me, if this was below, that would be a red flag. The fact that it's well above tells me again that Salah is doing decently. He's getting those chances. He's involved. And just because he's not scored an open play goal, it will come. So therefore, that addresses my second point on Salah. Now, the third thing you may say is actually he got 2 penalties. So his XGI is high because of the 2 penalties. So then I do the third table, which is let's remove XG. I mean, we could look at non-pen XG as well, but let's look at goal threat. So on a per minute basis, Salah's at 13 penalty area touches over the 90 minutes compared to 10 in the first 25 game weeks. If you look at goal attempts, he's got a goal attempt every 6.7 minutes compared to 3.9 minutes before. So I think there is enough out there to tell you the minutes per attempt is 13 minutes per attempt versus 22 minutes before. So despite the good fixtures, I think there's enough here to tell you that this Diaz shift is not changing it too much. The goals will come. So there's 3 tables to basically put my mind at ease on if Salah is worth triple captaining in game week 29. Now, there are other factors to triple captain. This isn't a triple captaincy discussion, but it's more about, is Salah still the asset? Is he still the captainable player if Mane and Diaz start? Now, Champions League, this is tonight. And by the way, for time stamping this, we're recording this before the Champions League game that Liverpool have tonight. You will obviously be listening to this on a Wednesday or a Thursday. So we don't know how the Liverpool lineup has been against Inter, but I'm expecting that at least in one of the games, you will have Diaz, Mane, and Salah set up. So the first burning question, therefore, for me was, is Salah still effective with this new attacking lineup? I think the answer is yes. What's your perspective on that? Anything from the eye test that you think is different in Salah in these games where Diaz and Mane have started versus before?
No, I don't think so. I think a lot of Salah captainers, for example, this game week also got quite unlucky because he had a very early big chance that was like a 1-on-1, and the keeper saved really well. So I'm pretty insistent that Salah is going to be my captain in 29.
Yeah. I think between Salah and Kane, I mean, let's address it here because we've covered Spurs now and Salah. Between Salah and Kane, for me, definitely still Salah. Yeah. I mean, you have to add the fact that he gets 5 points for a goal. Liverpool are much more consistent. I mean, I think one is playing Arsenal and Brighton. One is playing Brighton and Man United, both away. Yeah. Even though Man United is probably the easier fixture of the Arsenal one, which Liverpool have, but Liverpool are a better team as well and a more consistent team as well. So I think on the balance, for me, it's a non-discussion. It has to be Salah. Yeah. You're on the same page, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So then the second burning question for the Liverpool section is, who's the best third Liverpool asset? Now, again, a lot of the discussion goes into the macro strategy on, do you even want a third Liverpool? So if you're in the position where you're thinking that I want to have a third Liverpool, I think there are 2 standout candidates. There's Robertson and there's Diaz. Probably Mane, maybe Van Dijk. So these are basically the people in consideration. So I wanted to first have a table up here, which is basically comparing for all the defenders, the XGI for the season. And what you see here is Trent is way ahead of everyone. I mean, he's got an XGI of 12 over the season, and it is, he's the go-to guy. A lot of people were actually debating if on wildcard they should go Robertson over Trent. Absolutely not. So that's a non-discussion, I think. But then if you go down the list, you have Cancelo, number 2, you have Reguilon, number 3, and Robertson, number 4. So for me, and he's above Reece James. And of course, Reece James has missed a lot of minutes. So I'm not comparing Robertson to Reece James. I think James is the better asset. But if you're going for a double game week, I think getting the 4th most productive defender in the game is just a worthwhile punt. Now, people come to Robertson's overperformance of XGI. So if you look in this table, on the right of the XGI, you have XGI delta. And essentially, Robertson is overperforming his XGI by almost 6. So he's got 6 goals or assists more than what he was expected to have. I think there is an element of overperformance as well. So if anyone throws at you Robertson's points in the last few game weeks or across the season, I think that's not a fair reflection, because ultimately, from an XGI perspective, he's still behind Cancelo. And maybe if you looked at minutes per XGI, well below Reece James as well. So
almost 5, by the way, I think. Yeah.
Correct. So my point with Robertson is, he is as nailed as it gets, because I don't think these games are ones where you get Tsimikas in. Both Brighton and Arsenal are tough away games. Yep. Well, tougher away games. So I think Robertson plays both. And the neat thing about Robertson is, even though he blanks in 30, he has Watford at home in 31. And that's the fixture again, where you want a guy like him because he'll be in with a clean sheet. A bit like this James game, right? If he gets 1 assist, we are basically looking at 2 bonus. And I don't say 3 because Trent will take the 3 if you get a clean sheet. So I think Robbo is well worth a look. The only issue with Robbo is a lot of people who don't have Robertson and Doherty may look at Doherty as the more priority transfer because it gives you 1 extra player in game week 30. But that's my Robbo part. But you obviously have him. But if you didn't, Would that be something you would look at?
Yeah, I think I'll go straight to Robo, especially because he's also for me, much more nailed than Diaz. So yeah, I think it's a no-brainer.
Okay, so let's come to Diaz then. So with Diaz, I mean, the one point to make is the guy looks electric, right?
Yeah,
I mean, he's one of the, him and Kulusevski. I mean, it's odd, right? Sometimes we talk about on Twitter. There's a really good account called Bullet, and he basically and also I think Luke also tweeted this, that a lot of time we have this narrative early season that I'm not going to take a punt on any new signings. But look, Diaz and Kulusevski are two examples where they can hit the ground running. I mean, they've done really well. He's kind of almost, Liverpool fans tell me, made the left side his own. I mean, if Mane didn't have a bigger stature in the club, and if he wasn't a more difficult ego to manage, I think Diaz would almost share minutes with Mane. But I think on reflection for the rest of the season, people think that Diaz might share minutes with the Jota, and Mane and Salah are pretty much the guys who will continue to be nailed, and then Firmino will come back into the picture as well. But if you look at purely from a statistics point of view, in terms of minutes per chance created, he's number 2. So he's doing better than Mane. So it's almost like when we were talking about Kulusevski versus Son, we were saying, look, Son is better than Kulusevski. It comes down to price. I think with Diaz and Mane, Diaz is better than Mane, even though he's cheaper. So then it's a point of, you have to basically believe how many minutes he will get. I think some people like, I think Pranil took a punt on Diaz in the Gameweek 26 double, and he wasn't rewarded enough because he got both games, and he should have hauled a lot more than he did. I think people who can take a punt on his minutes, I think he's a decent shout, but it goes back to the fact that, would you really want to take a punt on his minutes when you can go for somebody who has a game in 30 as well? So for me, there's less upside with Diaz versus a Kulusevski. I think the debate between a Robertson and a Doherty is a bigger one to have. So that's where we are on Liverpool.
Nice.
So I think I answered one burning question on, is Salah as productive? The second one was between Diaz and Robertson. I think we both agree it's Robertson, right?
Yep.
But then the question is, would you go for... So assume you have... Let's say you have 2 Wolves defenders, and you're picking, you want to ship one out, and you still have only 9 players for Game Week 30. Would you pick Doherty over Robertson?
9 players, huh? Man, you're putting me on the spot here today.
I'm gonna put them as well. Okay, maybe I'll go first.
Yeah.
I would go Doherty. I think
Okay.
At a push.
Okay.
The reason being, Doherty is looking very good as well, and he's looking nailed for the next 3 games. And if he gets the 3 games, it's not that much of a compromise. I mean, if you were looking at a world where people are going dire, and imagine Doherty didn't exist and there was still rotation on the wing back spots, and you couldn't go Sessegnon because Reguilon was there, you couldn't go Doherty because Emerson was there. But I think if we are believing that Doherty plays the double and he plays Game Week 30, then I think he's got solid attacking numbers as well. So I think he's worth going for because it gives you an extra 90 minutes over Robertson. But yeah, if it was a Dyer or a Davis discussion, then I would definitely go Robertson.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'd go. Yeah, I'd go Doherty as well. Yeah, extra fixture as well. So yeah.
Okay.
Agreed.
Okay. And what about I guess in Spurs we didn't talk about if Sessegnon is injured for 3 weeks, would you go Reguilon over Doherty?
No, I wouldn't. I think I'd still go for the guy who's in form. I mean, Reguilon did score, right, and he could benefit. He could do well, but without Fence sitting here, he's a little bit cheaper, and he's just coming off probably his best game in a Spurs jersey as well. So I think I'd go Doherty over Reguilon.
Fair. I mean, especially those who have already played their wild card. I think having the knowledge that Doherty would be nailed for the foreseeable. I mean, I think the issue with Doherty is you have 2 bad games and then you lose your spot. So people use the word nailed, and I did as well, very loosely. And I think he's first team, but he's two bad performances away from being dropped. So that's the risk you take.
I probably should have mentioned in the Spurs section that he had a good game against Everton, but in the I think at Middlesbrough game or yeah FA Cup game, he had a terrible game, or not a terrible,
Yeah.
but a bad game. So we really have to wait and see. I mean, we're getting too excited about one game, so yeah, we'll see.
All right, excellent. Let's go to Arsenal then.
Okay, Arsenal, very similar story to Spurs. Great fixtures from here on out, and two fixtures to be made. So I guess two doubles to be put in somewhere in between. And yeah, so they have a good fixture run. Oh, by the way, so Tom Freeman on FF Scout did a excellent article on assessing the Arsenal assets. So please, guys, go give that a read if you really want to break down stats. He really does a good job there, and I'm sort of gonna use some of his, not use, but a lot of what he was saying in his article really was aligned with a lot of things that I was thinking as well. So hopefully I can sort of summarize that as well as my thoughts. Yeah.
And that's a members only article, so hopefully we don't give away everything.
Yeah, members only. So yeah, I guess the first guy we have to talk about is none other than Saka, and uh, okay, okay. So anyway, Saka. So he leads all Arsenal midfielders in the last 9 game weeks in terms of every statistical category you can think of for an attacking asset, in terms of bonus points, chances created, goal attempts, shots in the box, penalty area touches, and XGI per 90. Saka and Odegaard lead. So Tom Freeman notes that since game week 16, Saka is third for shots, 8th for chances created, and 13th for XGI amongst all mids. So with stats aside, you can see how electric this guy has been recently. How good how good Arsenal have looked, and every time he has the ball, it's like a magnet to his feet, and I feel like something's going to be created out of Saka. So I tweeted recently that he's one of the most or one of the best buys I've had all season in terms of long term holds, and right now everybody's hopping on him. I think his effective ownership is over 60%. So without any hesitation, the first Arsenal asset you should go for, besides let's say Ramsdale, is Saka. Even in the case of Ramsdale over Saka, I would be very bullish on trying to get Saka in your team. So that being said, the other midfield options are Odegaard as well as Martinelli. A couple weeks ago, I would have said Martinelli is the more explosive asset, and I think you could go for him in terms of just goal threat and wanting to score every single time he has the ball. Very direct type of player, like a young Cristiano. I know Cristiano is sort of his idol. But the issue is what his minutes were at risk, sort of with ESR coming into the fold. They're sort of like the like substitutes, right? I know ESR is dealing with COVID right now, but we'd assume he'll be back in maybe 1 or 2 game weeks. So there's always that lingering around him. Regardless, he's continuing to start and continue to get enough minutes to be a viable asset. So Martinelli certainly one to consider, but I think I would go for Odegaard over Martinelli at this point in time.
Really?
Yes, I would, because I think a lot of their play is happening through Odegaard. Granted, he can end up being the pass to assist guy. However, we saw how he's finally found his groove. He's finally found his role in the team. He's essential to unlocking the keys of Saka and Martinelli, and sort of really works well with Lacazette as well and with Saka. So I'm very bullish on Odegaard being a solid asset to have. But with the limited amount of midfield spots we have, it's very difficult to sort of free him in or put him in, which brings Lacazette into the fold. And on the note of Odegaard and Lacazette, in Tom Freeman's article, he sort of notes how this season Arsenal's creating 43% of their chances from the central zone. So for the listeners, Arsenal are creating 29% of their 29.8% of their chances from the left, 43.3% of the chances from the middle, and 27% from the chances from the right. So pretty balanced from left and right. However, it's very clear that a lot of their chances creation are coming from the center. And it makes sense, right? Because Odegaard's there unlocking the keys. And what is Lacazette? Lacazette is a assessed high striker who knows how to play the kind of the dummy role at times, the pass off type of striker. So a very intelligent striker in my opinion. So yeah, Lacazette is really impressed. 5 assists in the last 5 game week, top amongst all forwards. In the last 10 game weeks, Laca is 5th amongst all forwards in terms of XGI per 90. So I think Lacazette is also a very decent shout, especially with the lack of forwards we have up top. So yeah, and on final note on the defenders, we haven't been seeing the best of the defense because I remember maybe 2 or 3 game weeks ago, Pras, we were very keen on bringing defender assets in for the double, right? Yeah, for the double. And the clean sheets didn't happen. I know we had a section on Gabriel versus Tyranny as well. But, you know, I wouldn't be too down on it. You know, the fixtures throughout the rest of the season is pretty solid. So even like a Ben White at 4.4, 4.3 could be a good bench fodder just to have as your maybe 4th or 5th option in your team. Yeah.
I think I agree with all of that. Let me ask a few burning questions for Arsenal then, because I think everyone agrees Ramsdale and Saka are the 2 guys to have. So between a defender and an attacker, I think you make the right point. Firstly, for the double, you know, Leicester home, Liverpool home, both are attacking teams. Leicester always score, Liverpool always score. So yes, Arsenal can get a clean sheet out of anywhere. In fact, Arsenal, I think, kept a clean sheet at the Emirates against Liverpool in the Carabao Cup. So Arsenal are, from all expected data, a top 4 defense. So I wouldn't be down if your third Arsenal asset is already a Ben White, like you said, or Gabriel. Having said that, given the fact that these are, you know, I didn't like the fixtures. The reason I sold Gabriel for a hit last week, obviously, was 1, because of James. And number 2, because, again, Leicester, Liverpool, Aston Villa, Crystal Palace, Brighton, Southampton. These are the next 6 games. All of them, I like their attack. So yes, they could keep maybe 2 clean sheets here, but they could also keep 0. So that's what basically the thinking in terms of defenders. So let's move away from defenders in terms of then the attackers. So I think you've hit on Odegaard, Martinelli, and Lacazette. I think I slightly feel that I prefer Martinelli for the upside, than Odegaard. It's a little bit of Odegaard will probably get 1 assist over the next 3. Maybe you could get lucky and get 2 assists. Martinelli could get 2 goals. So basically, that's what you're punting on. And for the price, 5.3, you might as well punt for the upside. So that's my thinking in terms of Martinelli versus Odegaard. But I think the more interesting one is Lacazette versus a Martinelli or Odegaard. So would you want to use your third Arsenal spot? So going back to those people, I asked you the question, people have 1 transfer. Should they spend that transfer on getting a Lacazette for a Jimenez? Or should they take a hit for, or maybe go the Doherty upside? So do you see enough upside with the Lacazette move than some of the other players that we've talked about, like a Robertson or a Doherty or a Kulusevski even? I'm putting you on the spot again.
I think the issue here is the price difference, right? Because the assets you're mentioning are probably like 6.5 and less, most likely 6 and less. Versus Lacazette is quite expensive at 8.3. So, for example, if you have Kane, it's hard to fit Lacazette in with him. It's actually possible, even in my team, if I get rid of Son, for example. But if you took out the price difference, I think Lacazette is a good shout. And the reason is, besides all the narratives about him lacking goal threat, Arsenal have been playing really, really well, right? And their attacking is in free flow, and every single time I watch them play recently, and especially with Saka on the ball and Laca just lurking around, it's just where the ball goes and how the play happens. He's going to get involved, and they're scoring goals at this point in time, versus how inconsistent we see in Spurs. So I'd be more confident going for someone like Lacazette over, let's say, a Kulusevski, long term wise, even this double plus 30. but it's hard to compare the defender upside. I'm not thinking of the combinations right off the top of my head. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's also team dependent. So I just wanted to have the debate because that's a burning question in a lot of people's minds. I would personally think, in terms of if I was to answer my own question, I would think the priority of fixing your defense, going back to my earlier point on the defenders, there's a big dearth of good defenders in 29 and 30. I would fix my defense first. For me, the priority would be a Doherty or a Robertson over a Laca transfer in. If you have Laca, that's fine. That's great. You're in a great spot. But that would be the way I would see it. Martinelli, I just wish ESR didn't have COVID, man. I mean, then we would have seen in this game against Watford if Martinelli is still playing and if he's still preferred. And absent that, with Game Week 30, we don't have any benches. Now, maybe Martinelli will come on anyway. With Game Week 30, you want to basically err on the side of, caution. You're already going for a Doherty who should play, but you never know. So you don't want to end up with 7 players, essentially, in 30. And that's the only thing basically putting me off Martinelli. But I really believe in his upside. I think if you look at their XGI, pure XGI over the last 10 game weeks, Martinelli is number 1, even above Saka. But then this was the time when he had completely won his place back, or won his place over ESR, and ESR was coming on the 80th minute and scoring anyway. So we're going back to that time. Maybe after the red card, maybe after him not being on it, I think. You just don't know if he has the minutes or not. So that's where I am in terms of Arsenal. I would probably prioritize a Spurs Doherty over any third transfer for Arsenal. But that's been helpful.
Yeah, completely fair. Okay, so let's move to Brighton, Everton, and Newcastle.
Yeah, so this is the shortest piece. I don't think anyone wants to hear this, and we're going to keep it short. Don't close the stream yet because we'll come to our bus team in a second. My point with Brighton, Newcastle, and Everton is, by the way, firstly, before I go there, Arsenal, one other point to remember, they're very likely to double in 33.
Yep.
So regardless of how the FA Cup outcome is, the FA Cup outcome in Game Week 30 will only determine the opponents for Arsenal. But I think there's a very good likelihood that they will double. So as you're thinking about your Arsenal players, think about the fact that having 2 or 3 may be actually good and may actually even be worth a hit, because you're getting a lot of games from them in the next 5 game weeks. So that's my last point on Arsenal. So coming back to Brighton, Everton, Newcastle, what we see on the screen is basically the fixture ticker up until game week. So this is from game week 31 to game week 35. And why is that important? Because Brighton, Everton, and Newcastle are all blanking in game week 30. So my first thought was, are they worth holding? Because, for example, they may have amazing fixtures from 31 onwards, and you want them anyway. And I think out of them, Everton you may want, because they may have a double in 31 or 32. This has not been announced. This is just in terms of they have a lot of games to reschedule. 31, 32 are free midweeks, so they may have a double in 31 or 32. But we just don't know. So am I going to punt on a team that's just lost 5-0 to Spurs just because they may have a double in 31, 32? No. So if somebody wanted to go for, let's say you have 12 players for game week 30. I don't know who you are. If you do, maybe go for Jimenez to DCL. But that's about it, right? I mean, maybe Richarlison if you don't have the funds. And then you just make the guy sit there in 30 and then you hope for a double to come in 31, 32. Brighton are looking really poor. And in the next 5 after the blank, they play Arsenal away, Spurs away, Southampton at home. Who are you really going for? Yes, they have Norwich at home, but I think not for me. And then lastly on Newcastle, now this one is needs a little bit more thought process because Newcastle are looking very good. We've looked at data last week. They are a top 6 team, both in attack and defense. They have cheap assets that may look good. Fraser, Willock, the defenders, Schär, Dubravka, maybe even Wood, St. Maximin. There's a lot of interest in Newcastle. But for me, given the fact that they play after 30, they play Spurs away, Wolves at home, Leicester at home, Norwich away, and Liverpool. I guess Wolves and Norwich are decent. Leicester may be decent. But I just don't feel that it's enough to burn a transfer now. Just because they don't play in 30. I honestly feel that's what it comes down to. I think Newcastle is a team a lot of us will invest in, but after the blank in game week 30. So That's all we wanted to cover in these 3 teams. I don't know if you wanted to add anything else, Sonaldo.
No, perfectly put. Perfect. Yeah.
All right. Bus team?
let's go to Bus Team, and I have your team up here first. By the way, Pras, absolutely killing it this week with the bench boost. So shout out to you there. Very happy for you.
109 I'm sitting on, not gloating, but I'm happy. Yes.
Amazing. Yeah.
So Bus Team, look, the plan always from game week 26 was this was the triple captain week. All of you have triple captain in 26 and are looking at my team and laughing. You should be laughing. This is not going to be a game week 26 style triple captain. I'll probably be happy if I get 10 to 15 points. If I get two blanks, that'll be a big disappointment. If I get one return, that gets me 10 points. If I get two, that's 15. So
please read out your team, by the way, for the listeners.
Yeah, I'll do that. So in goal, I have Ramsdale. Good point. And then I have Robertson, who has a double, Trent, who has a double, and I have James, who is Newcastle at home. I will play James depending on his minutes against Norwich on Thursday. And then the fourth spot right now is Dean. I think that will very likely be, or actually on the screen, that might be Kilman. That'll very likely be Doherty. And then you have in midfield Coutinho, Rafinha, who both have decent fixtures. I think West Ham away for Coutinho and Rafinha. Norwich at home is decent. Then you have Salah for the double. You have Saka for the double. And up front, I have Kane for the double. And then Broha, who has Watford at home. So I'm happy with the team. I could just do Dean to Doherty and leave it. But as everyone knows, I am not immune to FOMO. So if the Kulusevski fever hits high levels, then Coutinho to Kulusevski is a move that I could look at for a hit. Only because I think it may fund for me a Vardy move for Jimenez later. So that's the thinking, that I could go in game week 30 for Vardy that not many people will have. So that would be the couple of things I'm thinking about. Another thing I've thought about is I could go Coutinho to Martinelli. And why I would do that is basically I could do a Salah hokey cokey. I could go Salah to Son potentially. So by going Kulusevski now, I'll have triple Spurs and I couldn't go Son. And for the reasons we've talked about, Son is still better than Kulusevski if money didn't matter. And when I'm doing a hokey cokey, money really doesn't matter. I could go for anyone when I downgrade Salah, right? So I could go Salah to Son, back to Salah in 31. I could go Salah to Maddison or Barnes, and then I go back from Rafinha up to Salah in game week 31. And why people are looking at the hokey cokey, let me spend a second on that, is essentially obviously Salah blanks in 30. But the idea is that after 30, in game week 31, they have Watford at home. That's the early kickoff. So if there's any news that comes about that Salah isn't starting, because he'll obviously have two games in the international break, and then they have the Champions League and they have City. So a lot of people speculate that if he plays again, 90 minutes twice over the international break, could this game be, the Watford game, be the game where he gets a rest? So if you're doing a hokey cokey, you're sitting there, 15 minutes before the deadline, a legitimate source tweets that Salah is not going to play Watford, you just leave it, right? Because you can then not have Salah for the Watford game, and then you don't have to go for him for the Man City game. You just come get him after that. So it gives you a little bit of optionality, which is why I think doing the hokey cokey works a little bit. But if I'm burnt with the Watford home, I would have basically essentially been backing against Salah for Norwich at home, Leeds at home, and Watford at home, because in game week 26, obviously I didn't triple captain. So I fully understand that doing the hokey cokey has the potential to give you egg on the face, but it's just ideas right now. I think what I would do in game week 30 depends on what happens after this game week. That's me.
Yep. Okay, so I'll go to my team now.
Yep.
Okay, so for the listeners, I have Ramsdale in goal with a double, Robertson and Trent both with a double, James and Livramento. In the midfield, I have Son with a double, Salah with a double, Bowen for now, Saka with a double, and up top I have Lacazette and Broja, Lacazette with a double. On the bench, I have De Gea, Ramsey, Dean, and Dennis. Listen, no particular order here, so I still need to sort out my starting lineup and stuff, but I think there's a few things I really need to mention without getting too team, into my team. But I still have my wildcard, bench boost, and free hit 2 left to play. And this week,
order. We call these guys chip orders.
And this week, I actually was expecting a red arrow, and had the fear of a massive red arrow actually. So I feel like the James captaincy really got and Saka as well really helped me sort of. This is the sort of luck that you need sometimes, get over the edge. And now I think at the very least I'm looking at a green arrow, which is really a big win for me basically. Without boasting about it or anything, just because I knew what I was up against in terms of all the wild carders and the bench boosters and stuff. So I'm very satisfied with, let's say, this gray arrow right now. Looking into
You've played your chips really well, man. I mean, you took
yeah.
the hit in game week 26 at the right time. That -8 worked out really well.
Yeah.
It set you up. I mean, I think this week your team was a little bit suboptimal, and
It was.
maybe you lose a little bit of ground on Thursday because you have less doublers.
Yeah.
But then if it's the bad doublers you don't have. You don't have the Wolves. So I think you'll be fine. I think you've played it really well with your chips.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Hopefully, I think the biggest rank killer for me would be Coutinho. But for example, if James does well, then it can make it up. So let's see what happens. Regardless, I don't think it's going to be a big red arrow. But moving into 29, I'm really well set up. And so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, already 7 doublers. I can potentially get 8 or 9 doublers in, and so a lot of thinking here has to be done. Originally, I was so set on free hitting in 30. I thought there was a little bit of upside, and I just didn't want to deal with all the transfers leading up to 30, and just want to kind of just forget about game week 30. But now I've totally changed my mind, and I'm going to free hit possibly in 33, most likely in 33. And so I'm trying to navigate 30 with 8 or 9 single game week players. And then you'll be very surprised to hear this, Pras, but I'm thinking about keeping my wildcard till 34 and possibly.
No, I'm not. I mean, I actually don't think people who are looking to wildcard in 31 with 1 free hit left and a bench boost left, I don't think that team is. You don't need the wildcard, the free hit in 33, because they're decent teams who are free hitting. So you could look. Obviously, what you're losing is you've lost a little bit of ground in 26. Maybe you triple captain Salah, so you got away. But in terms of the doublers, you didn't have enough doublers. You lost a little bit of ground in 28. In 28. 29, you're well set up. You may lose a little bit of ground in 30, maybe 31 and 32, but otherwise, I think the team is fine. I think you have to sort of now go for game week 34, 35, and then hope that the bench boost really, bangs and you get value for money.
Yeah, I mean, listen. I'll be the first to admit I've been scared the past few game weeks, and this strategy is quite unique from the norm in some ways, but it's also very traditional, right? And it really banks on 36 becoming a big bench boost for me, because of ideally a late wild card. You have less time to really utilize and maximize, the fixture swings and stuff like that, which is why 28 was very popular, and 26 as well, where you used it. So we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll adapt. Maybe in 32 I see an opportunity to use it. So I'm not open-minded or closed-minded about when to use it. But basically, I'm set on trying to navigate 30 without a free hit. Which means I'm trying to bring in some players for game week 30. And the two things I've thought of right now is a very easy -4. So I'd go Bowen probably to Kulufsky, and then I could upgrade either Livermento or downgrade Dean to Doherty. So triple up on Spurs here with a -4. I've also thought of doing Son to Kulu and Dennis to Kane, and then Dean to Doherty, which would be a -8. But another very interesting way to go about it. I think I also have to figure out who I'm getting rid of to bring in besides just the hit. So most likely, I don't think I'll make that move to get to Kane without Son for a hit. I don't think that's worth it. So that's where I'm at for now. Yeah.
Good. I like both the ideas. For a double game week, I think a -4 is justifiable if you're getting another doubler and you see upside. So yeah, okay. I think it's good.
Okay, well, thank you guys and the podcast listeners for joining in again on our 15th episode of Burning Questions. This is pre-recorded once again, and next week we will be back for the blank game week 30. Thank you so much. Thank you, Pras, for joining me again today.
Thank you.